The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken discusses with the UN envoy Hans Grunberg Yemen crisis. Despite international calls, Houthi militia continues to recruit more children soldiers. The government forces inflict considerable losses on Houthi militia in Hajj. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Roshan Fouad. Secretary of State Antony Blinken discusses the Yemeni crisis with the UN Special Envoy. Blinken expressed deep concern with rise of Yemeni civilian casualties and condemned attacks by all parties that lead to escalation in Yemen. The Secretary further assured that resolving the conflict in Yemen remains a top U.S. foreign policy priority. British ambassador condemns Houthi recruitment of children in Yemen by stating that it's totally unacceptable behavior by any party. He added the war must stop for the sake of these children, who deserve to live their childhood. He calls for all parties to de-escalate and engage with the new UN-led peace process. Despite repeated international calls against using children in armed conflicts, Houthi militia seems to take all such calls into granted and doubles recruiting activities in its controlled areas. The following report has more details on this.
Thousands of minors have been recruited by the Houthis since the beginning of their military expansion in late 2014, according to human rights organizations, with hundreds killed in conflict last year. The UN panel of experts on Yemen reported that the Iran-backed Houthis staged large summer camps in schools and mosques, where Yemeni youths were radicalized, given weapons training, and then dispatched to the battlefields to fight Yemeni government forces. During the annual summer camp, children received military training, including evading rockets, laying mines, and digging tunnels. The experts have documented instances in which Houthis sexually abused women who refused to attend their camps. In addition, the rebels denied other individuals humanitarian aid for refusing to fight. According to experts, many Yemenis attend recruiting events out of fear of being punished by the Houthis or losing financial rewards. Yemeni military experts and officials believe that the Houthis have doubled their recruitment of children through summer camps and courses to increase their manpower, which has been depleted by attrition tactics used by government troops in Ma'rib. According to military reports, child soldiers have been murdered on battlefronts outside the city of Ma'rib, as the Houthis attempt to capture control of the city. Sources have stated that 1,410 children aged 10 to 15 who had been recruited by the militia had been murdered in fighting in 2020. They've also reported that Houthis had established 52 military outposts for indoctrinating and training youths, and that over 40,000 children have been recruited in the war over the last 7 years. The Houthis' violations against children are vile. The Houthis are attempting to build a generation of extremists who constitute a threat to Yemen, the region, and the world, with no regard for the children's well-being and what harm may befall them.
Mayun Organization for Human Rights and Development backed the British ambassador's appeal to stop the Houthi militia's recruitment of children. The organization urged permanent members of the Security Council to take concrete steps to prevent children recruitment. Mayun's call coincided with the annual International Day Against Child Soldiers, which takes place on February 12. The ongoing war in Yemen seems to see no end, yet it is the vulnerable children who bear the brunt of this conflict. International organizations have warned that millions of Yemeni children suffer from malnutrition, let alone the spread of infectious diseases. More details on the impact of war on children are within this report.
The conflict in Yemen, the intensification of hostilities, the multiplication of active front lines and armed groups and forces, compounded by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, has resulted in acute suffering for Yemeni children, their families, and their communities. According to the UN Children's Fund, more than 10,000 children have been killed or maimed since the escalation of the conflict in March 2015, equivalent of 4 children every day. According to the UN, the country's humanitarian crisis continues to be the worst in the world. And as per Henry Tefor, Executive Director at the UN Security Council, children are the main victims of this ongoing mad war, and peace is the only solution to save them.
Without peace, we cannot help these children, we cannot help the people in need, and there will be no return of livelihoods. 22 million people in need. That is an extraordinary number. 11 million of those are children. 80% of the population is under the poverty level. We have 8.4 million that are on the brink of famine, and a child dies every 10 minutes. So you say to yourself, this is more than the population of Switzerland.
This latest wave of violence makes a desperate situation for children and families even worse. Millions of children at risk of death, injury, starvation, or disease, as the world's worst famine in decades looms. An estimated 1.7 million children are internally displaced, and more than 2 million are out of school. Nearly 2.3 million boys and girls under the age of 5 suffer from acute malnutrition, and around 8.5 million children do not have access to safe water, sanitation, or hygiene. Save the Children warned that just when Yemeni children need the world's help, overall funding levels currently stand at less than half of what's needed. This year, funding for the organization's treatment of children impacted by the conflict has reduced by more than 40% compared to last year. This funding shortfall will affect children like 8-year-old Omar, who was out playing in the city of Taiz a few weeks ago when an artillery shell exploded nearby, seriously injuring him and killing his elder brother Mahmoud. Yemeni children have been living through a horrific and endless nightmare for 7 years now. Children continue to be killed and injured on a near daily basis. They go to bed hungry, see people starving to death, and miss out on school. Every day, children risk death or injury if they venture outside and get caught up in the frequent shelling and bombing of places where they should feel safe, like homes, schools, hospitals, and marketplaces. The atrocities and immense suffering endured by children in Yemen are the result of an armed conflict that will invariably leave a generation of Yemeni children scared for life. Peace is the only solution, and child survivors need full support to heal and rebuild their lives.
A human rights report reveals that Houthi militia has committed 3,419 crimes and violations in Ib. The report recorded the killing of 213 civilians and the injury of 189, in addition to the beating of 121 others, including children, women, and elders. The report pointed out that the militia completely destroyed 12 farms, in addition to looting 38 vehicles and another means of transportation. The joint forces thwart a new attempt to station Houthi militia in mountainous areas and strengthen their defenses west of Taiz, which has caused human and material losses. The military media of the joint forces reported that the militia resumed their attempt to create sites in Makbana district, but their attempt ended in complete failure. Military media also pointed out that the joint forces maintain complete control over the entire lines of contact on the fronts of the western coast, with its southern axis west of Taiz and the northern axis south of Hodeidah. The Houthi governor of Al-Jaw, Faisal Haidar, was injured and others were killed by airstrikes in Hajjah. The Houthi militia had pushed Haidar as part of human reinforcements to lead in order to support its elements on the fighting fronts in Harad. The militia is throwing its full weight on the fronts of Harad, Hajjah, following the fierce fast battles led by government forces with direct support from Arab coalition fighters. A Houthi siege for the 4th year prevents more than 3,000 families from returning to their farms and homes west of Qataba. Local farmers said that militia members stationed in El-Tabab and the hills surrounding Beit El-Sharji area, Bab El-Ghalaq and Wadi El-Kharza, north and west of El-Fakhr. This led to the displacement of more than 500 families in 1 year, and the displacements escalated 3,000 displaced families in less than 2 years. Tribal sources revealed that Houthi snipers directly targeted farmers and citizens while they are in the farms, and they further prevented the operation of water wells to irrigate their farms, which caused losses for these families. The Arab coalition destroys a Houthi boat in the south of the Red Sea. The coalition confirmed that the Houthis' use of Hodeidah port militarily threatens freedom of navigation and global trade. This comes after the UN envoy to Yemen confirmed during a speech to the UN Security Council that the use of the port of Hodeidah for military purpose is being investigated. Massam destroys 163 mines and explosive devices planted by the Houthis in Bayhan and Harib districts. The engineering teams of Massam project clarified that the bombs and mines posed a threat to the lives of citizens. The engineering teams are continuing their efforts to clear and survey all the destroyed areas. Coming next. In Mukalla, a terrible fire has broken out and damaged vast areas of palm trees in the city.
هذا هو محل استهداف الحواث الذين استهدفوا المواطنين وهم نائمين. هذا هو الصاروخ. من الساعة 4 ماشينا الضربة من الحوثيين في المخيم. هذا يعني استشهدوا أولاد عمي، هذا استشهدوا أنا أخواني كلهم يعني شوف يعني قدام في الخيم. قدام في الخيم يعني في كل مكان يعني رؤوسهم ما التقوش، الرأس ما التقاش، الرأس ما التقاش. الحمد لله.
Welcome back. A terrible fire broke out in one district in Mukalla. Hundreds of palm trees have been damaged to the fire. Local people started efforts to control the fire before fire brigade sector joined them. More details on the story are within this report.
A massive fire broke out in Asad al-Jabal countryside in Araida district, east of Mukalla. The wildfire ravaged the plentiful farms, razing essential greenlands to the ground and putting farmers out of business.
Despite being a rural area in which civil defenses equipments are severely lacked, we, with the help of local people, managed to put out the fire before fire brigades came. Yet, lots of dates trees were burned. They are our sole income.
People did what they could to stifle the flames, but the fire persisted for hours, feeding on the storm's howling winds. The terrain was jagged and remote, which delayed the arrival of the civil defense teams. The fire ended up devouring about 1,000 palm trees, turning these farmers' primary source of income into charred remains.
The smoke coming out of the dates tree was thick and heavy, yet with the help of ambulances we could deal with cases, especially those suffering from suffocation. More than 1,000 date trees have been damaged in this fire. We could manage to put out the fire with the help of fire brigade. We are still on site, ready to deal with any emergency.
The farmers were struck with grief over their lands being reduced to embers. These palm trees were their primary source of income, their livelihood.
Houthi militia continues to double taxes imposed on merchants and civilians, as well as raising the prices of fuel, cooking gas, and customs tariffs. The militia has also raised the rent on endowment assets for tens of years and increased the value of the taxes, as well as forcing custom tariffs on imports coming from government-controlled ports. Tax revenues were recorded in government areas as weak collection, amounting to 290 billion riyals in 2021. compared to 200 billion riyals in 2020. The US aid report mentioned that the support for a joint stock company's economic recovery and livelihoods program increased nearly 50% in tax collection. Observers attributed the weak tax collection to mismanagement in the government's ability to collect revenue from all areas under its multiple control. The Yemeni gas company confirmed that it will continue to supply the Houthi militia-controlled areas with gas on a daily basis at low prices. The CEO of the company denied the militia's allegations about the existence of gas crisis, stressing that it deliberately sold it on the black market for huge amounts. The Houthi-controlled areas are witnessing a stifling gas crisis in light of its availability on the black market at more than 12,000 riyals per cylinder. People in the Houthi-controlled areas are suffering from severe domestic gas crisis. This comes when the senior leaders in the militia are fostering a parallel black market to blackmail citizens and sell the gas at extremely high prices. The following report has more details on this.
The areas under the Houthi militia control are experiencing a stifling fuel crisis, which has caused some power stations to stop working, and parts of the cities are plunged into darkness. Hundreds of cars crammed in front of petrol stations, most of which were closed for unknown reasons. Many residents interpreted this as a deliberate crisis created by the rebels to obtain additional funds from the people's pockets in order to recruit more fighters and to compensate for the militia losses in the governorates of Shabwa and Ma'rib. People in the Yemeni capital said long lines of cars filled the streets near the city's fuel stations, in a scene they used to see during the past years. One of the people said the Houthis are trying to create a fuel and gas crisis. They confirmed that electricity would be stopped under the pretext that there is a lack of diesel. This comes at a time when the citizen is obliged to pay electricity bills on a weekly basis. The salaries, however, are being paid on an annual basis. Citizens complain that it takes them a month and a half to obtain the gas cylinder that the militia sells. They said the leaders of the rebels are profiting from the black market. Others affirm that the economic crises in the Houthi militia-controlled areas are cooked up as fuel appears in large quantities on the black market, with prices are at more than the official one. According to the World Food Programme, living conditions in Yemen in general continue to deteriorate due to the weakness of the economy during the past year, as food prices and the prices of other basic commodities rose significantly.
Tai's governorate has been witnessing tough fuel shortages. This has made a large number of commercial stores and malls to close as they cannot manage to move their goods. Such a crisis has added to the suffering of people who are already crushed by the deteriorating economic conditions. The following report has more details on this.
This is how most of the streets of Taiz look like. The main streets were witnessing traffic and almost continuous live movement as a result of the high rise in the value of oil derivatives, and most stations closed their doors to citizens. Urgent measures have been taken to provide quantities equal with the economic and commercial activity.
Gasoline now is for 34,000. I work from morning to night and I can't make enough money for it. I have a family to take care of and we want a solution for this.
The Yemeni oil company, which is in Taiz branch, remained just a name that occupies a large area in front of the building. It no longer holds the exclusive right in marketing and distributing oil derivatives. It has been absent from performing its role for 7 years in the liberated areas, but it works in its functional strength in the areas controlled by the Houthi militia and deprives the liberated areas in Taiz from its official share of oil derivatives, which made it an open market for black market dealers, in addition to smuggling large quantities of oil derivatives to the militia-controlled areas, which further worsens the situation in the city.
The main reason for the oil derivatives in Taiz is the companies not working since 7 years ago. So this created the black market and this led to the high prices.
As usual, when any rise in the prices of oil derivatives happened, a significant rise in the prices of foodstuffs and other requirements also happens, and it negatively affects all aspects of life. People continue to suffer in Yemen, and this needs to end as soon as possible.
The National Committee Against Coronavirus recorded 11 new cases of the pandemic. Committee officials said 2 recovered cases were recorded and 1 death. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 11,718, including 2,114 deaths and 8,545 cases of recovery. Here is a reminder of the main headlines. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken discusses with the UN envoy Hans Grunberg Yemen crisis. Despite international calls, Healthy Militia continues to recruit more children soldiers. The government forces inflict considerable losses on Healthy Militia in Hajj. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. This is Roshan Fouad. Thank you for watching.